We didn't get him fired. He's just headed to London. The endeavor still continues, but we're holding down the fort. Lucas Panzica with you alongside Titans legend Brad Hopkins, Jackson Williams, our producer. Much to discuss on this Thursday with you until 1 p.m. 615-737-1045 to jump into the discussion. What's up, B-Hop?
I'm grooving over here. Hold on a second.
Yeah, let it ride for a little bit, Jackson.
Hey!
No better way to kick off the show each and every morning. You a big Mace guy?
Come on, Lucas. Come on. Hollywood swinging.
I just kind of want to let you cook for a little bit.
It's a great morning. How are you, Lucas?
I'm fantastic. I feel like I'll be bringing down the mood at this point. We were going to open with the Titans injury report. That feels like a downer. I mean, how have you processed the last 5 weeks for the Tennessee Titans? We've gotten to talk on and off. I know you were on with Rhett Bryan earlier in the week. Coach Dave McGinnis doing the Mike Vrabel show, so you filled in for Coach Mack. You guys got into the Colts game discussion, but just the up and down of this season, the inconsistencies, B-Hop, week to week, how have you processed what the Titans have put out through 5 games in 2023?
Almost a first quarter report card.
Yes.
Right? 5 games in. I'm going to say, because of all the difficulties that I thought this team would have up front, there have been some challenges, but not near as many as I thought. For them to be as competitive as they are right now, even though they're not where they want to be, I would say that I give them a B-, maybe even a B, because I think that there is potential for them to get a couple of games that people don't expect them to win. Maybe it's this weekend, right? But I think for the most part, they have all of the things in place. This still is a vaunted defense that stops the run, even though it wasn't the case last week against Zach Moss. And Ryan Tannehill is still an extremely capable and healthy at this point quarterback that can find a number of receivers, whether it's D-Hop, whether it's Kyle Phillips or Westbrook-Akine, Chig. There's a multitude of dudes that he can go with through the football. They just got to get into a good rhythm, a consistency, get off the field, and let the offense do the work. So I'm going to give them a solid B right now, Lucas. What about you?
2 and 3, it's the inconsistency. So I would say a C+, B-Hop, if we're doing first quarter report cards. Because for me, the thing that this team is supposed to hang its hat on let them down on Sunday, and that's what's worrisome to me. The thing that this team's been able to fall back on, winning on the line of scrimmage, run defense, a must-have 4th and 1 inside the red zone, failing to convert, failing to run the ball consistently enough. It's the consistency that has been lacking, and that is my biggest concern at this point, especially after what they were unable to do on Sunday, the thing that we figured to be their biggest strength, specifically the run defense.
I think what everybody going into a game against the Titans figures to do is what? Slow down 22.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Titans are doing a good job of doing that themselves.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I understand the need for explosive plays. I understand the need for a change of pace. Tajay Spears is explosive and can do some of those things, getting to the edge, stretching the line of scrimmage, that kind of deal, right? Creating holes. But I think that the consistency that you're talking about comes from repetition over and over and over again. We hand the ball to 2-2 until things start to open up from there, because if he starts getting rolling, what happens? They bring bodies down into the box because they got to slow that guy down. And that's when the explosive plays can happen, because you no longer have a Tampa 2 with receivers bracketed. You've got a guy in the box that's trying to slow down the run, which means a single high safety and press coverage or something like that could be something that you could take full advantage of, especially when you have all the underneath presence that this team does. And don't forget about Ryan Tannehill's wheels. I think we need to tap into that more too. The guy's got some speed.
Derrick Henry, through 5 games, has had 15 carries, 25 carries, 11 carries, 22 carries, and 13 carries. And that's kind of how those games have gone. Titans didn't find a ton of success running the ball against the Browns. Virtually no success running the ball against the Browns or doing anything else on offense. In New Orleans in week 1, it felt like something they were having success with in the first half and got away from a little bit. And it clicked more against the Chargers. It certainly clicked against the Bengals, Henry's best performance of the year to this point. But against the Colts, how did you come away from that game looking at the offense that was able to get into the red zone, 1 for 4 when it got there, was able to move the football. Statistically, you looked at Tannehill, efficient, had enough yards, right? But ultimately, 16 points, it's going to be tough to win any game on the road in the division.
Not enough touchdowns. Not enough touchdowns. And that's completing drives. It's one thing. And another thing I will say that the Colts did, I thought pretty efficiently, was keep the ball. I don't know if you've got the stats over there as far as time of possession, but any time that the other team's offense is sitting on the sideline, that's not a good deal because they're cold, they're not into a rhythm, and obviously what's going on the other offense is working for them because they're consistently moving the ball down the field. Now, switching sides of the football real quick, I'm not going to blame this completely on the defense because I couldn't do that. This is a team sport, right? But when you give your offense opportunities and don't give them point differentials to work against, in other words, allowing the other team to score and then having your offense have to take the field to match that, that's something. So this is typically a team, in my opinion, that gets off the field on third down. That's not faced with, long 11, 10, 11, 12 play drives that keep that offense cold and on the sideline. So customarily, I'd like to see them get that ball back, get off the field, especially when you're able to stuff the run like these teams have been able to do. You know who they're missing? They're missing David Long. They're missing that kid that's down in Miami right now that played sideline to sideline and took full advantage of Jeffries double teams. All these all these guys can actually take full advantage of that front four by plugging those holes and taking full advantage. That kid's doing it down there. I don't know how many. I think he's probably their leading tackler down there in Miami right now. I think that's somebody that this defense could have used in the middle.
Well, they could have used Tier Tart, certainly, in the middle of that defensive line in Indianapolis. As we look at the injury report from Wednesday, Titans head out later on today. They're going to be on the practice field at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Derrick Henry coordinators will meet with the media before they ship out. Ravens have been in London since earlier in the week. They left on Monday. We'll get into a little bit more of that, the itinerary of both of these teams, later on in the show. Again, 615-737-1045. The phone lines are open for you to jump in. You have a question for Brad Hopkins, who's been in some battles with the Ravens throughout the course of his career. But B-Hop, taking a look at this injury report, Traylon Burks, knee injury, did not practice. Luke Gifford, linebacker, did not practice with a hamstring. Defensive back Elijah Molden did not practice with the hamstring. Jeffrey Simmons did not practice with the shoulder. Tier Tart did not practice with the toe. Of course, Tart missed a lot of practice last week, did not play against the Colts. How much of that did you attribute to Tier Tart's absence?
Yeah, I think
on Sunday.
And I'm not going to say a lot of it, but a healthy portion of it because you need your best players on the field, especially those ones that cause problems for the offense. So anytime that you're reduced to the numbers, basically, somebody having to step up and play, that's always the situation, right? Is that guy going to perform at the level of the person that sits in front of him? And you would hope that be the case, but there's a reason why one guy's a starter and one guy's not. And I think that we saw some deficiencies because Tier was not in the lineup. They're a better unit when he's on the field, of course. That's just undeniable. But does that mean that they should be able to just, that's an excuse? No, it's not. Because, there's guys around you that have to be able to pick up when you're missing someone as key as Tier Tart.
You think Tier Tart made some money on Sunday?
What, not being in there?
Yeah, like
does his value?
Does his agent just walk in with Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel and dim the lights and flip the projector on of that Colts tape?
Hey, this is what you don't want to have happen right here, right, Mike? And then start. Nah, I don't think you do that. I understand what you're saying. When you have leverage, when obviously the team doesn't perform at the level. And do you think Tier was kind of like maybe sitting on, in the back of his mind thinking, yeah, you miss me, you miss. No one wants. Listen, we play games to win games. I think sometimes, especially the competitive nature in us, we don't want anybody to succeed when we're not on there. You think LeBron James wants the Lakers to win a championship if he's hurt? No, he doesn't. He wants to be the catalyst for their winning. And a lot of us do, just the competitive nature in us. We want to see the team succeed, but not if we're not in the lineup, because we want to be a part of that winning too. So
mixed emotions.
It is mixed emotions because you want you guys to win, right, Lucas?
Yeah.
But I'm not out there,
like
man.
how Carson Wentz would have felt watching Nick Foles power the Eagles to a Super Bowl.
Exactly. Nobody wants the team to look the best they possibly can, and you're not in there, right? That doesn't make you. You're like, what? You guys are balling out, and I'm sitting there on the sideline nursing an injury? Stop it.
The Ravens' first injury report of the week showed Odell Beckham as a limited participant with an ankle. Marlon Humphrey limited with a foot. And Jadeveon Clowney, who did not practice due to illness. I'm going to be honest, B-Hop. I completely forgot that Jadeveon Clowney was A, still in the league, and B, playing for the Baltimore Ravens until I saw this injury report.
I think Jadeveon Clowney's been questionable since, 2011?
Well, at least since he got here, that's for sure.
I'm just kidding. Not really.
So, the identity of the Titans offense in 2023. We've hit on it a little bit here in this opening segment, but want to dive into that a little more with Brad Hopkins because you've got two teams going head-to-head in London on Sunday that are working under a new offensive coordinator. What are the biggest differences, biggest similarities between those two from 2022 to 2023? Let's get into it. Coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. Let's talk about identity. Identity of the Titans offense, the Ravens offense, both under new play callers. Todd Monken making his way over from Georgia in the offseason to Baltimore to replace Greg Roman. And Tim Kelly, of course, elevated from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator after Todd Downing is let go. Brad Hopkins hanging out with us on 104.5 The Zone. I'm Lucas Panzica with you until 1 o'clock. Jackson Williams is our producer. 615-737-1045 is the number. You got a question for B-Hop. You want to jump in on the conversation as I ask you, what is the identity of this Titans offense? B-Hop, that feels like something that's been a very easy answer for people in the Mike Vrabel era over the years. Whether it was Matt LaFleur, Arthur Smith, or last season, Todd Downing, it doesn't mean it was good, but you could easily pinpoint at least what they were trying to do, what the identity, the theme of the offense was, even if it wasn't finding success. Does that feel a little bit more difficult to pinpoint through the first 5 weeks of this season? And is that necessarily a bad thing?
I think this offense is disguised. And what I mean by that is whenever you have Derrick Henry, who has been so pivotal in the rushing the football discussion, whether it's been for this team or nationally, right? Because this is a guy that has won the rushing title not just once. I mean, he's done it a couple times, and rightfully so. But that was also because of a yeoman's effort to give him the ball, particularly when Art Smith was here. But I say in disguise in that that's what you would expect this team to do or want to do, but they're trying to be less predictable and doing other things. Now, I understand that because whenever now, let me say this. When you have inconsistencies up front, that does lend into you having problems in the run game. And if that's what we want to hang our hat on, zone blocking, schematically looking at who we're supposed to have by assignment and getting bodies on bodies that allows the run game to take off. Because of the, developments and changes and we're trying to get used to new bodies being in the mix, guys coming and going. I don't necessarily feel that this team is as comfortable where it normally would be in running the football efficiently. So they're trying to find other ways to be less predictable. If I feel I'm going to give it Derrick Henry right, Derrick Henry left, but I don't have the horses up front to create those holes consistently. Now, I've seen some blocks. Now, let me give 55 some credit. Aaron Brewer came out and laid out a block that I think that Marcus Spears should be talking about, or Jeff Saturday on ESPN talking about pancake and stuff, because, he lit a dude up. But we got to see more of that, right? That way you see the offense start to establish itself, and that is the identity. Everything else can play action from there. So I think that ultimately this team is still in disguise because they're not banking on their bread and butter. But can they bank on their bread and butter with the inconsistencies that we see up front? Now, I think that they planted seeds. I think Peter Skoronski is going to be a dog. And I think that once they find some consistency around those guys playing together, then you'll start to see the makings of a team that they can build on. But right now, there's a lot of newness up front, in my opinion. That's why they were getting the crap beat out of them in training camp. Jeffrey Simmons was unblockable for a reason. But then you started to see, especially when that first preseason game came around, I was like, this team they're a little better up front than I thought they were because of all the bad stuff that we talked about. But that always comes into play in the discussion when you have those changes that go up front. When I was here, I hate saying that, back when I was here, let's see, I was at left tackle for 13 years.
Yeah. Bruce
was at left guard from when I got there, and Munch retired. He was my left guard for the next 10 years. Kevin Long was in there. Obviously, John Runyon went to free agency. We brought in Fred Miller. But the point was we played together for a number of years. Benji Olsen at the right guard spot. Our unit was consistent because our nucleus was intact, and we knew how to play with each other. And that's an advantage, one that right now the Titans are starting to try and develop. But it takes time.
Disguise is an interesting word because I do feel like the Titans are working off of the perception of the offense, where last year, first and second down runs were the thing that just drove Titans fans insane, right? Running into a wall on first and second down and unable to create separation downfield, getting into third and longs, not converting those third and longs over and over and over again. The Titans, I decided to finally on Sunday chart every first down against the Colts, just whether it was a pass or a run. Because we still, anytime the Titans lose, we'll get calls on Titans Talkback with Kevin Dyson saying, it's just the same thing. First, second down run, throw it on third down. But I went and charted every single first down call in Indianapolis. And B-Hop, it went pass, 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 run, pass, the Henry incompletion to DeAndre Hopkins, run, pass, run, pass, run, pass, run, pass, run, pass, pass, run, pass, run, pass. So the first 3 first and 10 plays from the Titans were play-action passes. It almost feels like they're leaning into this perception of just first, second down run, Derrick Henry, run it into a wall, and utilizing the play action, which has been getting them down the field. But I wonder how much longer that works without Derrick Henry actually getting those carries and churning out those yards on a consistent basis like he has over the years. Like, how long until teams start to catch on to that early play action in those drives and that Tim Kelly maybe has to start going away from them? Or maybe teams can't do that because then you're leaving a light box for Derrick Henry. Like, is that a hard balance to strike?
Well, that's a great question because I think what you're trying to do and what you just chronicled is avoid being predictable. It's like if you're running play action in those first 2 downs, it's giving the appearance that you're running it and you're passing it. Now, if that's not a completion, guess what? That stops the clock, and now you're stalling drives out. You're in a third down, and next thing you know, you can't do anything with it. In my opinion, running the football in those first 2 downs, whether it's first down or second down or whatever else, and you develop third and manageable. Manageable is what? An easier completion of third down, moving the chains. That's not 3rd and 10. That's not 3rd and taking a sack, right? That's 3rd and something that my playbook is wide open because you can't tell me what I'm going to do. It's 3rd and 5. I could run a dive in this A-gap. Or I could fake a dive to this A-gap and then toss it a drag route or something with one of these receivers. And next thing you know, the middle of the field is wide open and we're moving the chains. But your playbook is so much more expansive when you're in down and distances that you can handle versus those ones that I need a completion here because it's 3rd and forever. And I'm sitting in a not so good position on the football field, like maybe their 40 or something like that. You know what I mean? Or my own 40 versus, pay dirt getting into the end zone. So I just think it's like, as a defensive coordinator going up against this offense, I'm thinking I need to stop Derrick Henry. And I guarantee you Tim Kelly's thinking that that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So they're going to try and do that first. So I'm going to do this. Well, you know what? Give them what they think you're going to do. But you have to make it work to do that because it doesn't make much sense for me to say, I'm going to commit to Derrick Henry running the ball and he gets, 2 yards in a cloud of dust and it's 3rd and 8. You know what I'm saying? So
it does feel like a lot of Tyjae Spears' success, though, has come off of drawing the defense into Derrick Henry. The 19-yard touchdown in Indianapolis was just that, right? Henry sweeping left, bodies are sweeping left with him, and here comes Tyjae Spears coming back the other way.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to do, though. And that's why he was brought in almost as a change of pace. Why? Because that guy can get to the hash. That guy can get to the other sideline. He's got that kind of speed. He can stretch the defense. And then when you get them moving, almost like a pendulum, right? Mm-hmm. Get them moving left to right, left to right, left to right. Then bam, you hit him in the mouth with the straight down the hill stuff. That's how you, in my opinion, do that.
615-737-1045. You want to jump in? Let's go to Dustin in Laverne. Wants to talk about Tim Kelly up first. What's up, Dustin?
Hey, what's up, guys? I just wanted to comment on Tim Kelly's play calling and stuff. I think that he's got some really exciting ideas and concepts, and I do think that he'll end up being a great offensive coordinator. He's kind of settling in right now, but he really needs to, in my opinion, work on his situational play calling. Like, for example, on the 4th and 1, if you're going to run Derrick Henry, that's fine, but don't start him in the shotgun 6 yards back behind the line of scrimmage and hand him the ball. Put him in the I formation, put a big blocker in front of him, and just do what we do. Like, those things don't make sense to me why you're going to try to get that fancy with it. You're either going to go one way or the other, I feel like. We don't have to trick him on a 1-yard run. Henry can get a yard if you set him up right. And then also, I don't know if I'm phrasing this correctly, but with a lot of the pass plays, we need to have more of, the blocking and then the check down kind of plays because I feel like those work almost every single time, and that's a safety security valve that, Ryan Tannehill can count on, and it kind of gets us out of a lot of bad situations. I see other teams doing that, like the 49ers seem to do it quite a bit, and it works really good. So just wanted to see what your opinion was on that.
Thanks for the call, Dustin.
Look at this dude. He's coordinating somewhere, Dustin. I know who you coordinating for. Vanny, where are you from? You calling in as under disguise. He hit on 2 great points. I cannot stand watching Derrick Henry try and run from a shotgun.
You were fist pumping when Dustin's talking about getting under center.
Okay, so first off, the guys don't have their hand in the dirt. And I know we don't do that a lot nowadays, right? But that's leverage. You put your hand in the dirt, that says I'm coming right down here to smack you in the mouth, and I've got the pad level to prove it, versus trying to show you something different and that you don't know whether I'm going to pass. Derrick Henry standing right next to me. I'm in the shotgun. I'm going to hand it off to him like a draw. You know what? Guess what? Derrick Henry sometimes needs that downhill momentum to get going. By the time that boy hits the line of scrimmage, he should already be 5 steps into some momentum. If nobody's in the backfield standing around him, that's been a problem too, Lucas. Guys losing up front, and next thing you know, Derrick Henry's having to dodge a dude once he immediately gets the handoff. You don't want that. I want him coming downhill. Right, if I'm going to be in a situation where it's like 1st down and 10 or whatever else, and I'm just committing to running the football, put that boy under center, tell him you're going to run it. Hand it off to Derrick now that he's gotten 3 or 4 steps of momentum by the time he hits the line of scrimmage, and he's coming with some force. That big body is moving now. Versus him giving the impression, I'm going to protect Ryan Tannehill on this pass play. Oh, no, it's a draw. Psych. I can't get going like that. Derrick is not that kind of guy to get going from standstill, right? That's Tajee Spears' role.
Yeah.
You can flip that dude, the ball in a toss or something like that while he's standing next to you in pseudo protection, and next thing you know, he's out the gate because he's stretching the defense, stretching the line of scrimmage. But Derrick, he's that guy that he takes slow steps to begin with. But then what happens? That big 18-wheeler hits that 8th, 9th, 10th gear by the time he's hit the secondary, and it's a wrap. You see him get faster and faster as the play develops, right? But from the very beginning, this is a dump truck trying to get going. It takes a minute. He's hit 4 gears by the time he hits his line of scrimmage, and that's what you want. But if he gets stalled out in the first and 2 gears, then guess what? That truck ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, that play didn't have a chance on the 4th and 1. But I do think, to Dustin's point, and he said this, that Tim Kelly's play calling has been refreshing for a lot of people in what he's done to get them into those positions. But why has it sputtered in your mind in the red zone? Titans near the bottom of the league in red zone efficiency. We've talked about this so much. An area where they have been top 5, top 10 consistently over the years. Titans the 4th worst, tied for the 3rd worst, I should say, red zone offense, scoring touchdowns at a 35.29% clip. What's been the biggest factor to you in that sputtering once you get inside the 20? 1 for 4 on Sunday.
Are we trying to play nice with the football because we have guys that we know are capable with it? In other words, if D-Hop weren't here, would we have near this emphasis to involve the pass game? And I'm not saying that his presence is a problem at all, because obviously this guy's catch radius is still tremendous. We saw him on a number of situations come up with key catches to extend drives.
D-Hop is still D-Hop.
He is still D-Hop. But we're also cognizant of who he is. So we always seem to make that effort to give him the football. Well, that also takes away from what this team is built on, this foundation. You say, should Derrick Henry play off of D-Hop, or should D-Hop play off of Derrick Henry? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, it's also interesting that what Dustin brought up, the check down stuff. If you've got D-Hop running through your secondary, people are paying attention to that. He's probably bracketed. Obviously, there's someone paying attention to him. More than 2 eyes are paying attention to him, which then leaves the slot stuff, the flat, especially when the pressure starts to build, and then he can get rid of the ball. If not, take off. Take off, boy. Use them feet. You're healthy, right? I'd use that. Matter of fact, I think he's got kind of Daniel Jones kind of skills like that. Sneakily, you don't even think about it until the guy is, next thing you know, running behind the safety and slides in for a first down. That's the kind of thing that I would want to see happen, especially when you're talking about the pocket breaking down, protection being compromised, trying to find someone safe to go with the football. And if I don't, I can pull this thing down and run it. You're going to see a lot of that from number 8 on Sunday on the other team.
Yeah.
He's going to let that pass rush go right around him, and he's going to take full advantage of it because, we're looking at Zay, we're looking at all these other dudes that might be recipients of a pass, but don't ever sleep on the fact that this boy is he's leading the team in rushing for a reason.
Yeah, and they've had injuries again at the running back position. The Ravens have, but I do want to get your thoughts on that Ravens offense under Todd Monken and some of the differences that we've seen. But real quick, DeAndre Hopkins leads the Titans in receptions with 26. The next closest is Chigakonkwo with 15. DeAndre Hopkins leads the Titans in receiving yards with 356. Next closest is Nick Westbrook-Akine with 143. The only thing DeAndre Hopkins hasn't really done yet in this offense is score touchdowns. Nick Westbrook-Akine is the only player with a receiving touchdown from Ryan Tannehill this season. He has 2. Josh Wiley's came from Derrick Henry against Cincinnati. Yet DeAndre Hopkins, through all those numbers, D-Hop, only has 2 red zone targets. Is that an issue for you, or is it more situational? Is that something that's easy to look at and point at and say this can't happen?
That's a good question.
And one of those was from Derrick Henry.
I was just about to say, we're inches away from him getting 2 feet in the back of the end zone, and this is a touchdown. And would that say Derrick Henry has thrown more touchdowns to receivers than Ryan Tannehill? That might be kind of funny. But.
It would tie Derrick Henry if he had completed that. Yes, they each would have 2.
Yeah, but that is what those are gimmick plays.
Yeah.
Those are situations that you don't plan on. Obviously, we know Derrick Henry is going to throw the jump pass. A la Tim Tebow. It's worked for them before.
Yeah.
It's in the repertoire, so we expect to see it. But it's not something that they bank on consistently. Okay. Now, I don't have any problem when. Put it this way. It is harder, though, to pass the football when the secondary doesn't have anywhere to go. Red zone means there's only 20 yards to go to pay dirt, 30 yards if you're adding the field that you have to cover, because you do have to cover the end zone, right? But the defense doesn't have anywhere. It's not like they're worried about deep plays or getting beat from behind.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep everything in front of them, and there's not that much space to go. So it does make passing in those situations harder. Now you got to lean on what? I'm in the red zone. I'm inside the 10. I need to pound these rascals into submission. And until I do that, I can still play soft coverage. I can still do all these things that make me flexible and able to cover both aspects, running and passing in the red zone, versus, hey, these dudes are really effective running the ball in the red zone, and we've got to really get geared up to slow these guys down. And then play action expands from there. This hasn't been the case consistently for this team. Not yet.
615-737-1045. John in Nashville is next. What's up, John?
Hey, just want to say, honor to talk to you, Brad. Man, I studied your game when I was in high school, played a little bit collegiately at left tackle, and between you and Bruce, y'all are my favorite Titans. So I just want to say that. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that.
Man, I know the game has changed a lot. Is the OG fullback position dead? Just the Lorenzo Neal type, the Schlesinger, the John Kuhn, somebody that doesn't want a reception, just wants to hit you. Because I feel we run out of these 2 tight end sets. All it takes is one of the offensive linemen to get beat, and then you got Derrick Henry, like you said earlier. He takes 2 steps and he's getting dropped in the backfield. He hasn't got going yet. When you have that proper fullback, instead of a tight end like Chig back there, that can clean that one man up and then gives the ability to Derrick to bounce out like he used to do. He would always hit up the middle and he'd bounce out he's very good at finding lanes. I just feel that instead of running out of these 2 tight end sets, run out of that stupid shotgun like Dustin was saying, and just it's just not a proper fullback anymore. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Let me tell you what a fullback brings to your offense. A fullback's job is to what? Run up in the hole and smack the crap out of a linebacker or whoever's in the hole. His job is physicality. It's not necessarily getting a handoff. He's a blocker in the backfield. He is the 6th lineman in the backfield. What's that caller's name again? I'm so sorry.
That was John.
John. Thank you, John, for the call. John said something that gave me goosebumps because he brought up Lorenzo Neal, our fullback. And I remember one instance when we needed a first down, and Lorenzo looked at Eddie and he said, "Get on my hip, Big Daddy." He said, "Get on my hip, Big Daddy." And that maniac proceeded to run down the line of scrimmage and just crush somebody. And I think it sprung Eddie for a touchdown. It's that mentality, my man. It's that mentality. Fullbacks are crazy. Think about that. The imminent collision. And you know you're going to get it. But also, a fullback is a running back on steroids. Not literally. I probably shouldn't have used that word. Because they're big. They're bulky. They're not as tall as Travis Kelce. They're not as tall as Darren Waller or somebody like that trying to put a tight end in the back. Or Chig. Chig's skinny. He's a skill position guy. A fullback's not that. A fullback usually wrestled in college. Or something like that. And they're used to the physicality. They do. You can't tell the San Francisco 49ers they don't have a fullback because they use them regularly. And that Juszczyk dude, he's a part of their offense.
Yeah, 4 catches and a touchdown against the Cowboys.
So what I'm saying is I'm digging that position, and we took full advantage of that when we had the fullback position. So is it a dead art? Yeah, because teams aren't committing to running the football like they used to. You know why? Because for whatever reason, 2 yards in a cloud of dust don't sell tickets. So we want to make sure that the offense has an ability to score and score points in droves because We want to make receivers safer, running across the middle. Can't touch the quarterback nowadays. Why? Because for some reason, a 45-28 score is a lot better than 17-13 in our mind's eye. It could have been a better game, 17-13. But, man, what was wrong with that game, man? They only scored 17 points? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because defense won or because that's just the give and take of a game. Nobody wants to see defense win. Defense, unfortunately, does not put butts in the stands.
Something tells me that Sunday's game is going to be closer to 17-13 than 45-42. And you're facing a pretty good fullback on Sunday in Patrick Ricard. The Baltimore Ravens has made Pro Bowls in the last 4 years. But let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens, present and past, with Brad Hopkins on 104.5. The Zone coming up next. 13-13 in 26 meetings. It's the record between Titans and Ravens throughout the history of that rivalry. Brad Hopkins has been a part of those battles, several of them, and right from the start. B-Hop hanging out with us on 104.5 The Zone. You got a question for him? 615-737-1045. I was doing some digging this morning, B-Hop, to see how often the road team has won in these games. Because I was just curious. The last 4, the road team has won. The Ravens winning here. Last time they played was COVID year, playoffs. Feels like forever ago. And then, of course, the Titans winning there in the regular season and the 2019 postseason. The home team has lost 11 of the 26 meetings between the two. Now, this game is a little bit different. They've never met at a neutral site like this and in another country. Titans are technically the home team for this game, but we're going to throw that out of the window. But what do you remember about this rivalry starting in the mid-'90s? When did it click that this became a heated matchup?
When Brian Billick started talking about us.
And how soon was that?
Jeff had a seemingly arrogance when we had our run in the AFC South. And I think that he put a target on his back, you know what I mean, for those teams that were consistently losing to us and wanted to beat us. So I remember Brian Billick mentioning the physicality of the game, mentioning what it would take for either team to win. And he spoke with this confidence that I hadn't seen before. Like, he knew he had something. Of course, he knew he had 52.
Right.
And that guy made the difference, okay? So if you didn't account for Ray Lewis on the football field, I swore that dude made a deal with the devil because he was in every position to make every single play every single time, and that kind of consistency just does not happen, right? That guy was flying around all the football, and he brought it. You talk about somebody that could hit you. I don't know if anybody's ever had a chance to block a fire hydrant, but that's exactly what that was like. Trying to put a shoulder pad on a guy that's not moving at all. And I thought that test, I remember I had him dialed up. Do you remember that play that Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, whatever, tried to sneak him on the blindside block, and he went to the sideline talking about, man, I just tried to block Ray. I understood exactly what he meant because I tried the same thing, and the guy didn't move. And I thought, what the hell?
It's not supposed to happen.
But the point was, I just remember there were a few games that you knew during the week that you needed to get yourself geared up to play. Pittsburgh was one. Pittsburgh week was always Pittsburgh week ever since we were back in the AFC Central. And we played them twice a year. That was going to be that was going to be a slobber knocker. And then when Baltimore started gaining their identity of what? A defensive-minded team. Because remember, they had Trent Dilfer. It wasn't like everybody was scared of him throwing the ball around. But you knew you weren't going to do much against that defense, which then played into Priest and everybody else being able to do things in a balanced offense, and they ended up winning the championship. So I just remember them coming from relative obscurity with a loose tongue here, because they weren't like, nobody knew who they were. Of course, they had Ed Reed and all these other dudes, so everybody knew who they were. The compliments on that side of the football made them incredible. But I just remember the turning, so to speak, especially here in the playoff game that they knocked us out. And that consistency went on for another few years. And it's pretty much still established now, who they are, because they're no longer considered, a team that kind of comes and goes in the AFC. And this was before Lamar got there. This team was consistently known as a team that was a defensive-minded team that could actually beat you in your own backyard, too, because of that. If you have a great defense, then they're used to playing in tough environments. You know what I mean? A good defense can play wherever. Home field advantages, whatever. But on the road, that's what you lean on. You lean on that defense because the offense can't hear. They're just trying to, make sure they don't give the ball away and create turnovers and put points up when they can. But the defense on the road is what wins. And that's why they were so consistently able to do things against us when they were on the road, because they had such great defenses consistently. So that's one of the things I remember about them, is that on that side of the football, they were nothing to play with. Nothing.
615-737-1045. Top tier in the F&M Bank chat says, I still can't stand Pittsburgh and Baltimore from back in the day. You can hang out with us on the F&M Bank chat. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Is there a singular game or memory or play that sticks out to you about that rivalry?
Yeah, the one that Eddie fumbled. And was it Eddie fumble, or was it just the ball getting taken away from him? It's just like, okay, this is what I remember. I remember the ball hitting the ground, and I remember Eddie trying to protect himself, maybe putting his arm up or something, because the defense was still coming even when he dropped the ball. So the point was, he knew what he was about to He's trying to get that extra yard. Next thing you know, the fumble happens, and that basically was the ball game. I'm not saying that he lost it. Of course not, because we all have to do our jobs. But I just remember that one instance where something as coveted as the football given to someone as trusted with that thing, it failed us. I didn't say he failed us. It failed us.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's like the physics. It's like when that ball was taken away from us, it's like the life just went out of our team that year. Of course, that was the end of the season, and it is what it was. And we didn't have that same unit the next year. There's some changes. I'm an older player. Everybody's a year older. We were respectable. We still made a good run, but we weren't the team that we were the year before. And I think that I'm not going to say they stole our identity, but they became the Titans that day.
Mm-hmm. Is this a matchup that, do those things come flooding back when the Titans get ready to play the Ravens?
Them kids were in college then.
Right.
They don't even know that. I'm not sure that.
I'm saying for you, for you as a former player, and when the Titans are getting ready to play the Ravens, do you start to kind of get those flashbacks and feel those emotions from those games? Because I agree, it's different, right? It's a different era. Yeah. These teams haven't played each other since 2020, which, there's players that have been on multiple different teams since then.
And that's the thing. What's hard to create in those rivalries, you have to be in the same place for a long time and play this team over and over and over again for it to be considered a rivalry, right? Because if you just play them once every 3 years, once every 4 years, is that a rivalry? No, because you don't play them consistently enough.
Yeah.
But when when you're on the same team playing against the same people, like me and Dwight Freeney. I mean, I played against him for, the rest of my career after he got drafted, and he was a Colt, So I knew that every year I was going to play him. He knew every year he was going to play me. So that's how rivalries are developed, because consistently these are the players I'm going to see. So I know in my mind I got to do X, Y, and Z. He's thinking in his mind he's got to do X, Y, and Z. That creates the competition. Now, if one side continually beats the other side, it's not a competition. It's a give and take. It's like, I got you 1 year, you got me 1 year. Or I got you last game, you got me this game. That's a competition. If I get you every single game, I don't even think about you, because that's who you are. If you get me every single game, now you're my crux or whatever. You know what I mean? I gotta get over you. You're my benchmark. I continually getting beat by you. From a team standpoint, that looks the same way, right? Jacksonville tried their best to beat us in 1999. They couldn't do it at all. So we became their benchmark. Like, they got to beat us, right?
Yeah.
So we became that benchmark for a lot of people when we were winning back in the day. And that's what they would hope to get back to this day. But it's hard doing that when you don't have the consistency of a roster that's played together for a number of years to create that kind of emotion that you put into that kind of a game. You know what I mean? It's almost as like you're playing that team that you see every 3 years because, I'm new to the roster, or there's so many new guys to that roster that I've never seen that guy before. He was in the NFC last year, now he's in the AFC this year. You see what I'm saying? So those differences can, sometimes create those situations.
Last four have been split between these two regular season wins, 2 playoff wins, or I'll say 1 playoff win, 1 regular season win for each team, I should say. Music City Malik on the F&M Bank chat says it is a head coach rivalry. Vrabel versus Harbaugh. Did get into it a little bit on the field in Baltimore a few years ago. Switch gears a little bit. Coming up in hour 2, Tennessee hosting Texas A&M in a game that could do a lot to shift the tenor of both of those teams' seasons. Hour number 2 coming up next, 615-737-1045. How you can jump in on 1045 The Zone.
Good morning. It is 11:02 from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. First Titans injury report of the week came out yesterday. 5 players not on the practice field for the Titans: Traylon Burks, Luke Gifford, Elijah Molden, Jeffrey Simmons, and Tier Tart. Azeez Al-Shaair, Aaron Brewer both limited with neck injuries, while Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins both limited at practice with rest. For the Ravens, Jadeveon Clowney, Odafe Owe, and Geno Stone missed practice. Clowney was said to be with an illness. He'll be ready to go for Sunday. Odell Beckham, Marlon Humphrey, Patrick McCarry, and Morgan Moses all limited at Ravens practice. Thursday Night Football tonight, Chiefs, Broncos, 7:15 on Amazon Prime, or right here on 104.5 The Zone. Chiefs already ruled out Frank Clark. His days as a Bronco seemed to be numbered as the team agreed to part ways via trade or release. Travis Kelce, questionable for that game tonight, did practice this week. Broncos getting a little help back in running back Javonte Williams, who is practicing this week with no injury designation. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome back. Hour number 2 on 104.5 The Zone. Buck Rising doing his London travels. It's all right. We don't need him because Brad Hopkins answered the call. In studio with us until 1 o'clock. Jackson Williams, our producer. I'm Lucas Panzica. 615-737-1045 is how you can jump in. You got a question for B-Hop, talking Titans Ravens, talking Vols Aggies. Coming up on Saturday at 2:30 kickoff that you can hear right here on The Zone, courtesy of the Vol Network. And, of course, 104.5 The Zone TV, the F&M Bank chat, where you can jump in YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Switching gears a little bit, B-Hop. Tennessee hosting Texas A&M. Checker Neyland in full effect, the CBS game of the week. Vol's a 3-point favorite. You've been watching both of these teams.
Yep.
How does that strike you? Tennessee a 3-point favorite at home. Does that sound about right as Tennessee comes off the bye and A&M comes off the loss to Bama?
It depends how you look at the A&M team that, in my opinion, did have a chance to beat Nick Saban, right? 26-20 in Alabama. That sounds
in
like
College Station.
Excuse me, College Station. That sounds like a team that knew its identity, that felt, hey, this team's coming in and they've had their struggles, but this is a year that we can catch them. And I think that maybe they're trying to take that confidence, at least playing competitively against a team that's usually been really, really good, and bring it on the road. Now, I will say for the Vols, fortunately, they've had some chance of time to rest, get healthy, look back and reflect on everything that they've done up to this point. The last time they left the field was a 41-20 whooping of the Gamecocks. Before that, they obviously beat UTSA like they were supposed to. But a Florida loss that, look at it however you want to. This is a team that thumped Vanderbilt last week, so it's like they look really good against them, but is that their real identity? But I think when you look at the Aggies and how they've played down the stretch, before they beat Arkansas 34-22, they whooped Auburn 27-10. So they've actually had a 3-game winning streak going up until they played competitively at home, Jimbo Fisher against Nick Saban. And we know that those two, they've had their instances, talking about whatever they were, I can't remember what it was they got into.
They've had their moments.
Yes, had their moments.
The impromptu press conference, the infamous rant from Jimbo, yeah.
Now, I will say the thing that would help the Aggies is that they have their pads warmed up from having played last week. Sometimes when you have time off, you got to get back up into that momentous play that you were playing with before, right? This team was on a 2-game winning streak, and then they took a break. So will it be easier for them to pick up from that South Carolina win and defend the turf at Neyland, or was it going to be something that they have to struggle with because they have had a difference in their schedule, so to speak? Sometimes when you get into that consistency, that flow, you don't want to change that, you know what I mean? But then you obviously look at football, the physicality of it. Sometimes when you can get a break, you take advantage of that, and it's something I'm sure that Josh and his team has done. They probably didn't do do a whole bunch of stuff on the field as far as physically running into each other, because it's going to be a long year. You're almost at the halfway point. So let's see where we are, right now in hosting this team that can come in here with some momentum, feeling a little bit better about themselves because they didn't get boat raced at home. They played competitively against an Alabama team. Now, an Alabama team that's not the Alabama of old, they have been more susceptible to some of the things, and teams have gotten better around them.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you look at the Georgias, when you look at all these other teams that have made improvements and that are staying at the top, it's like this isn't just a given anymore that Alabama's just going to run through the SEC. That's not like that anymore. This ain't your daddy's Alabama Crimson Tide.
What'd you make of Jimbo Fisher's decision to punt on 4th and 1 on the Alabama 45, tie ball game? Bama gets the ball. They're able to extend the lead, and A&M obviously losing at home.
Got no problem with that. You know why? Because he had confidence in his defense that he'll give his offense another chance to do it. And that's what you do in that situation. It's like a 4th and 1. I'm not saying anything about you offense that you can't get that 1 yard, but what if you don't? Okay, so I'm playing a safe bet that, hey, my defense is going to stand like they're supposed to, give the ball back to my offense so that we can get another opportunity at this thing. So I have no problem with him having that confidence. It wasn't a lack of confidence in his offense. It's just looking at it schematically where you are and what the book would say you should do in that instance. If you have confidence that your defense can get off the field on 3rd down and give the ball back to your offense for another opportunity, then do it. And I think that that's what he did.
B-Hop, I'm very concerned about Tennessee's ability to run the ball against that Aggies front. It's the SEC's lead rushing team as far as yards per game are concerned. Tennessee's been rushing 231 yards per contest. Texas A&M allowing the fewest rush yards per game, 84. They allowed 23 against Alabama, forcing Jalen Milroe to push it downfield. He did so. Jermaine Burton with a huge day, nearly 200 receiving yards for the former Georgia Bulldog. Tennessee's been able to hang its hat on running the football this year in pretty much every game but one. That was down in Florida. Vols rushed 30 times for 100 yards, an average of 3 yards per carry, but they didn't have a rush longer than 12 yards. A lot of that pressure was on Joe Milton, who's without Brew McCoy for the remainder of the season. Not only their best receiver, but their best blocker on the perimeter as well. So even those little screens, the extensions of the run game, Brew McCoy's the guy clearing out the defense. He's not available for the rest of the year. So for me, this boils down to, I'm not even going to go to cautious optimism. I'm going to say flat out concern, because the first time Tennessee's truly been tested against a front seven in the SEC, South Carolina, they ran all over. South Carolina's been terrible on the line of scrimmage all season long. I have very high concerns about the ripple effect and trickle down that could negatively impact Tennessee's offense if they can't run the ball against that A&M front that's chock full of 5 stars.
And what seems perplexing to me is that Jalen Wright hasn't found pay dirt consistently. 1 rushing touchdown for as many attempts. If you look at it, I mean, he's got 61 carries for 435 yards, averaging over 7 yards a carry.
Yeah, and the one score was he broke it on Tennessee's opening offensive series against South Carolina, long touchdown.
42 yards.
Yeah.
But the point is, for all that productivity, I'm saying 400 yards at this point, that's not bad. Because, I mean, that's easy. You're probably approaching 1,000 yards if you pick it up a little bit for the remaining part of the season, right? And that's not bad. But the fact that he's only found pay dirt just that one time, and that was from a long run. What is the problem? Where are the drives stalling out, basically? Because if you look at it, from my opinion, if he's averaging 7 yards a carry, or if he's, is consistently finding holes in the defense and can get carries and get yards, why are we not seeing more scores from that side of the football, from running the football that way?
Yeah, different things have plagued them at different times, I think, for Tennessee's offense, whether it's, the drops against Austin Peay in the first half where the offense looked sluggish. Joe Milton's missing those intermediate throws, and when he's hitting them, they're dropping them. I think 5 drops in the first half, something to that effect. And they weren't able to run the ball effectively in Gainesville. Cooper Mays being back at center made such a massive difference in that regard against South Carolina. But the problem with this offense, Brad, is when it's humming, and it's fun to watch, and it's hard to stop. But when it's sputtering, it is sputtering, and it's happening very quickly. And, time of possession is not really a big factor for Tennessee, so you prefer that they be on the wrong side of time of possession, because a lot of times that means the offense is clicking. Those touchdown drives are 1 minute, 2 minutes. But the 3 and outs are blazing fast. And it kind of when those incompletions start to stack up on themselves, it really negatively impacts the momentum of this offense, especially for a team like Texas A&M that wants to be able to run the ball effectively and wants to be able to beat you up front. Tennessee has to run the football. They have to. It's the key to everything they do on offense.
Well, I'm going to say this. A 3-and-out is debilitating. Sometimes 3-and-outs can cause rifts between offense and defense because that defense was just on the field 3 plays ago. They're tired. They want you to put together at least a first down, a couple of first downs so they can get their wind. And when you get a 3-and-out, here is a quick story. I remember one time we had 3-and-out, and I was walking off the field, and I knew how we felt, dejected because we weren't able to get a first down. And I knew that our defense was tired and that they needed a break. And I got a sidelong glance from Mr. Monday Night. He didn't say anything to me. He just kind of looked at it, and I went nuts. I went ballistic. Just because I felt bad already that we weren't able to, complete a first down and give them the rest that they needed. And I didn't need somebody, adding injury to insult, So I went nuts, Lucas. I'm screaming at him right. I blacked out. I promise you, I blacked out screaming so hard, he caught me. He had to catch me. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, B-Hop, you all right? I was like, I just kind of made my way to the bench, and sat down. But it was frustrating. And those situations can develop when the offense isn't performing at the level that they want to and being accountable for their part of this thing. It's like the defense can give you the ball back, but if you don't do anything with it, eventually, if that happens too often, you're going to have some situations where, hey, get your stuff together, right? It's just like us. It's like, as an offense, if we see the other offense scoring at will, and we've got to get on the field and match a score for a score, we're looking at the defense like, bro, are y'all going to stop anybody today? Seriously, you guys are getting ran through like a wet paper towel. What is the deal? So in those situations, if you're not being held accountable for your side of the football, it can develop some stuff. So I think that, like you're saying, running the football, controlling the pace of the game, that's what that is. If you're running the football effectively, then guess what? You're winning time of possession. You're moving the chains. And that the offense is slow. They're like, they're not on the field to gain any sort of momentum or any sort of flow. So you would think that rather than throw incompletions, right, stopping the clock, giving the ball back to the other team with plenty of time to work with, maybe even a good down and distance because you had a punt, trying to flip the field. You want to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and that's what running the football does, especially when you're hosting.
Greg on the F&M Bank chat says, really enjoy listening to Brad Hopkins talking real football. I agree, Greg. 615-737-1045 if you want to chat with Brad Hopkins. As Ryan in Lebanon will do just that, talking Vols here on 1045 The Zone. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, guys. Good morning, man. Love y'all's show. It's awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
So I got a question for Brad. Man, what does Joe Milton and the Tennessee offense have to do to get an upper hand early in the football game? Is it run more draw plays or go to the read option with Milton to get that front five on the back of their heels?
Yeah.
Man, would love to hear your take on that, and I appreciate it. Go Vols, y'all.
Thanks, Ryan.
Vols. That's a great question. You know what? I think the RPO has been a huge advantage for a guy like Joe Milton III, right? Here's a guy that has running capabilities, and you have to be cognizant of that. But also he's a smart guy running the offense. So while you think it might be a more predictable situation, I think that the best thing for them to continue to do is tap into his athleticism, make them think that, hey, look, I could pull this thing down and I could take off and beat you. But you've also got routes that are developing, those big plays, those explosive plays that you hope to tap into to keep the defense honest. At some point in time, they're going to be keying him. They're going to have a guy spying on this dude to make sure that you don't take off and run somewhere. That's one less guy in trying to rush the passer or trying to create some havoc back there. But in my opinion, a nice clean pocket then allows Joe and that offense to kind of flourish as far as being less predictable and using the RPO, that run pass option, to be able to do some things. Because if I don't know what you're doing as a coordinator, now first off, the down and distance is going to determine a lot of what you can do.
Yeah.
I'm not running much RPO in 3rd and 11. I'm throwing the ball. We know that. RPO happens what? Being able to have that option of doing whatever you want to do happens in manageable down and distances that it doesn't seem like the obvious. 3rd and 6, you don't know what I'm going to do. 3rd and 5, you don't know what I'm going to do. 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and, guess what? I'm sitting back here trying to pass the ball because it doesn't make much sense for me to give the ball back to you punting on 4th and 10. So
Yeah.
let's not do that. So I think that them being less predictable and tapping into this quarterback position that has the diversity to be able to do that, that's smart quarterback play. This isn't back in the day when Peyton ain't going nowhere. You know what I mean? He wasn't going anywhere. But with time in the pocket, this dude could dissect you like a surgeon. And I'm not saying that that's not Joe, but let's tap into what his skill set actually is.
Career high already in rushing for Milton, 24 carries, 139 yards. That's an average of just under 6 yards per carry. 4 touchdowns for Joe Milton. He'll do it against a nasty Texas A&M front on Saturday. 615-737-1045. Your calls and John Sadak on the Westwood One National Radio play-by-play call of Titans-Ravens joins us next on 1045 The Zone.
The Tennessee Men's Clinic can help you get back to performing like you have not in years. We all know that ED is something that's common for dudes. As they age, your body starts to change. You just got to make sure you have a support system in place. That's what the Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to provide. They have helped thousands of guys deal with ED, and they have an experienced staff who will find you the best treatment path for you as the individual moving forward. 2 locations conveniently here in downtown Nashville and their newest offices in Cool Springs for you to seek a consultation and pursue your treatment plan. You can find out more about those treatment plans at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com.
Welcome back. It's the Buck Rising Show on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica with you, hanging out with Titans legend Brad Hopkins. The Titans are not in London yet, but the Baltimore Ravens are, and John Sadak is. Westwood One play-by-play broadcaster joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Boots on the ground. He'll be on the national radio call of Titans-Ravens on Sunday. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Lucas? Brad, good to be with you.
Fantastic. Appreciate you doing this. When did you land? When did you land across the pond?
Took a red-eye on Monday night, so we got here local midday Tuesday morning.
Are you still sluggish? Are you tired?
Yeah, how you feeling, John?
No, feeling pretty good. I've been doing sightseeing with the wife and kids for the last couple of days, and to be honest, I acclimated pretty quickly. It's gone well so far.
Because we were going to talk about this later on in the show. I don't know if your flight was side by side with the Baltimore Ravens heading over there, but Lamar Jackson was asked about it yesterday if he's adjusted, and he said, "No, I'm going to need 1 or 2 more days, but I'll be good for Sunday." John, the Titans will not leave until later today. I know that's prompted some concern amongst Titans fans. It's the same thing they did the last time they went to London in 2018. Mike Vrabel liked how that operation went, so they're running it back, but I don't know. Did you make anything of that difference in the Titans' plan to leave later today versus the Ravens leaving on Monday?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I think there have been abundant teams that have followed the protocol that Tennessee has employed. And, Baltimore, understandably, suffered the second worst blowout loss in an international game ever. And you have a lot of the same folks that are aware of those decisions that are still on staff that remember that suffering, and they're trying to get ahead of it, if anything, to cleanse their own demons. And perhaps there's some weight to that to some extent, but much like these pro athletes, when I travel calling games, we're going East Coast, West Coast on a regular basis and changing time zones. And yes, there is certainly an effect that you need to catch up to some degree. But ultimately, it's about making plays more than it is about that. And as long as you have a few days to acclimate, I don't necessarily think that's a big deal. If this were to turn into a blowout, certainly it's going to be one of the lead storylines thereafter.
John, I don't want to say that this is a must-win situation for either one of these teams, but both teams coming off of a loss, they want to get that bad taste out of their mouth. In my opinion, I'm thinking that Mike Vrabel's decision to leave today stems from the fact that he may be able to get more work in preparation for this game in a familiar environment like his own facility versus dealing with all the fanfare, the glitz and glamour that come with traveling internationally. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I mean, Rocky III taught us that, right? How he prepared for each fight. Yeah, and there's some weight to those parallels to some extent. Yeah, that is something that was part of the storyline for Baltimore going out on Monday and spending that full week. They had to move their entire operation out there. And yes, logistically, that is a far more significant challenge that comes with a lot of other working elements to try to get ready for a game. And that's a great question, right? The creatures of habit that all people are, but heightened to a new level with a certain layer sometimes of some superstition for a handful of guys. What matters more, the regular routine or getting as naturally, acclimated as much as possible? And something thinking about for this week, this is a concept that on a far different degree, but with greater regularity, that we see increasingly often in college sport, particularly with a lot of the West Coast teams that are now being forced to these super early kick times. I think in the aggregate over the course of a long span, if you were to have this London experience on a weekly basis for years in the league, I think you'd see every result, right? I think sometimes it would work out great, sometimes it would work out poorly. And I really do believe that ultimately, more than anything else, like any other event or any competition, it comes down to who makes plays. And that's what we're really going to be looking for between these two teams over the weekend.
John, as you prepare to call this game and you kind of look at the resumes these two teams have stacked up this season, which offense do you feel needs a better performance on Sunday, a better bounce back?
That's a great question because the Ravens are coming off one of their worst showings of the year with a lot of drops. Lamar Jackson with a poor showing in terms of his general offensive stats. The scoring offense is down markedly with him as a starter compared to his prior years with the Ravens. And yet they have been highly efficient, particularly in the red area, both offensively and defensively, almost at an abnormal rate when you look at some of their other stats. And those drops after not having a drop at all through 4 weeks, to have 5 in one game, that feels a bit like the law of averages, right? Like that's going to balance out. Where Tennessee, you're looking for that explosion to really kind of be able to assemble a true threat that can be more sustained and just have that electric kind of explosive finish to it. And Ryan Tannehill's numbers on the campaign, over the course of the last couple of years, have dipped dramatically over the set that he had in his first three wearing a Tennessee uniform. That's an excellent question. I think on the year, because of how efficient Baltimore's been in the red area, and because of until the drop issues last week, while the pass-run balance probably hasn't been where Todd Monken would like it, you're dealing with a couple of first-year OCs that are still kind of feeling their own identity. I feel like Tennessee is probably the team that I'm looking to that would need to take that bigger stride to really cement who they are and what they can do.
Hey, John, I think the Titans' rush defense last week got bitten by the backup bug. And what I mean by that is if Jonathan Taylor were healthy, had been running the season, I think that the Titans would have shut him down for maybe 20 yards on the day, right? But when some dude named Zach Moss comes in there, and we all know who he is, rushes for over 160 yards, to me, that's an anomaly. The question I would have for you is, when the leading rusher from the other team is the quarterback, is that another degree of difficulty that you have to contend with when it comes to slowing down the Baltimore Ravens running the football?
Yeah, I would certainly say so. And I think that's where, there's such unicorn ability there with Lamar Jackson. He's trying to break Randall Cunningham's record for most consecutive years leading his team in rushing as a quarterback. And that's such a rarity, and it's that double layered effect that can help the pass game too, because I think his ability to run enhances what they can do in the red area, and I also think enhances what he can do on deep balls. He has had the best deep ball year completion rate per NFL research of his career, and one of the best in the league this year. He's well over 50% on deep ball action, and I think a lot of that stems from, I think you're exactly right, that knowing that dual threat nature, you're kind of caught in between on certain plays. And we all know, you watch these games every week, it's only a handful of plays that can often decide the game. And that's a tremendous amount of leverage for an offense when you have a weapon that's multifaceted like that.
John Sadak with us on 104.5 The Zone, Westwood One play-by-play broadcaster, will be on the call for the national radio call alongside Derek Rackley for Titans and Ravens. So interesting what you point out there about Lamar Jackson's success throwing the ball downfield, John, because that does feel like a storyline coming into this game, right? Two franchises with new offensive coordinators, with changes to those identities on offense. How much have you and Derek been discussing that? How much of a storyline is that for you guys coming in? And is that the most discernible difference with the Ravens under Todd Monken after coming over from Georgia, is the effectiveness downfield? Because as B-Hop pointed out, it's not like Lamar Jackson stopped running the football.
Right. Yeah, and I think the emergence of Zay Flowers has also been a big part of that too. Between Tajay Spears and Zay Flowers, we have two very dynamic, productive rookie offensive threats on each team that figured to play a pretty significant role during the course of this game. And I think all of that package together, I think you're spot on. And I do think, yes, that's a major storyline because we're still in the relative infancy, right? I mean, I really feel like with the truncated preseason and with the limited amount of reps that starters get in the league at this stage of the game, that we're still kind of figuring out who teams are, that there's almost this lagging sense of preseason of old spilling into the regular season, that you don't really have that traction or identity. For some teams, it varies. It seems like it can be a couple of weeks until you really know who they are and what they can do. And I think they know who they are and what they can do. And that's where I think you're right on, that this can be that kind of dual proving ground for a couple of teams to try to see exactly what they are capable of and what their personnel matches up with the best.
John, I knew what I thought when they told us that DeAndre Hopkins was coming to Nashville. I thought, D-Hop and D-Hen, oh, man. But I'm not sure I feel at this point satisfied. Where are you, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins and how Tim Kelly is using him in this offense? He's obviously leading the team in receiving. I would say probably because of Traylon Burks not being on the field consistently. But is there a balance there, or even should it be a balance for this team that has traditionally ran the football with Derrick Henry?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think efficiency really is a big key to that, right? And the yard per carry number for Derrick Henry is not where you would like it to be, and Hopkins is that explosive electric player and probably that central focal point of what is possible, that as a guy that can take over a game, that you can just especially give him the ball in space and allow him to make plays. And I'm not sure that we've seen that full realization just yet. And that's where this Ravens defense is a quite stingy one. I mean, they're 1 or 2 in the league in points per game, yards per game, and sacks. And I think having that, I think you put it well, because it's not necessarily always a balance. I think you have to take with what is given. And Baltimore has been excellent, particularly against the run over the course of this season. And at least based on stats on paper and the track record built to this point, this is a game where you would figure someone like Hopkins kind of needs to and is perhaps poised to explode.
Okay, so the final one I have for you, John, is comparing these two quarterbacks. I don't have to ask you the Westwood One perception of Lamar Jackson. I think the entire planet knows who that is. But I want to get your perception of our quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. When you look at the numbers, the only thing that would be obscure between these two would be the touchdown to interception ratio. We obviously know that Ryan has thrown a few more interceptions than he has touchdowns, but by yards, they're almost on par with one another. Give us your perspective of our quarterback here in Nashville.
Yeah, I think it's, efficient by completion percentage and able to get productive during the course of that yardage. But I think waiting to see him harness that in a way that he can take over a game, that he can win a game. This is a quarterback-driven league. Quarterbacks drive the ship for everything. That in many ways determines the ceiling of success, particularly as the defensive rules have changed over the course of the years. I mean, even look at 20 years ago, what a defense was capable of during the course of any one given game, and the Ravens probably number one on that list of their defense in the early 2000s. Quarterback skill and more than that, even I think the feel and chemistry with team and that ability to control a game in the way that only that position can. I'm not sure that I have a full grasp of that just yet for him. And that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing how he handles this Ravens defense in concert with the rest of the offense on Sunday.
John, is this your first time calling one of these international games for Westwood One?
It is, yeah. Normally, I also work doing collegiate football on television, and I'm granted these outstanding assignments doing NFL and some select college for Westwood One. And then I have baseball responsibilities as well. I'm the TV voice of the Cincinnati Reds. So in the past, I haven't been able to make this work. I had the chance to do it, but could not make it work with all the other moving parts. So I'm really excited for it. It's my first trip to Europe, period, let alone to call one of these games. And the experience so far has been top-notch. The league is doing a great job.
Could that be a deciding factor on Sunday? Those players, whether it be for the Ravens or Titans, that have taken their first trip internationally, getting caught up in trying to see Big Ben and looking at the double-decker buses that go all around through the city of London and whatnot. I mean, you just mentioned the first time you're able to call it internationally. For those kids that are first time internationally playing a game, how much of a distraction could that be, and could that possibly be a deciding factor?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. I think for the most part, pro athletes are able to compartmentalize and yes, of course, take in some of those personal, joys that a trip like this affords, but not at the derailment of their success. But at the same time, many sports, many levels that I have covered over the years, there are certain places that have distinct advantages. Anytime a team is playing in Vegas, there's usually a pretty big advantage. Anytime a team is playing in Miami and there are people that are there that haven't been there before, there could be a real advantage. And yeah, so certainly I think that's possible. But I also would imagine and think that it's up to not just the coaches, but even the veteran players on these teams to try to instill that urgency, that sense of responsibility to make sure that you're on point and prepared for the game.
I think that's what
so
John.
I would think overwhelmingly that'll be the case.
I think that's what John Harbaugh may be hedging against, taking his team out there early, get all that stuff out of the way. Sleep in tomorrow and then go see the sights and whatever else. Get it all behind you, and then let's focus in these last 72 hours for the game.
Yeah, I think that certainly can be another effect of that, even beyond just the whole body clock issue. But, yeah, there's a greater window of time to kind of burn through that. I think that very well could be the case.
John, before we let you go, just curious what you're most looking forward to about that environment on Sunday, what you're most anticipating about the crowd, about your vantage point where you'll be calling the game, the actual football that'll be played on Sunday. What comes to mind that you're most excited to find out about?
I'm really curious to see when and how everyone cheers. I'm really curious to see what the garb is going to be of everyone going in. Are they going to be in the respective team gear, or are we going to see, British Premier League, soccer kits being worn? But But yeah, probably most like what is the crowd en masse going to cheer and boo at? What are they going to recognize and appreciate? To what extent? Because I know if I were at a cricket match that I know nothing about, I might react very loudly or differently than what a seasoned fan would. So I mean, will the kicking game get a larger cheer than it will a touchdown? I think that could be possible on a certain play.
They're going to go nuts for those field goals, John. Nick Folk's jersey numbers are going to skyrocket after this game. John Sadak of Westwood One with us on 104.5 The Zone on the national radio call Sunday alongside Derek Rackley. John, thanks so much for the time, man. Enjoy London and have a great call.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. John Sadak with us on 104.5 The Zone. Kickoffs, field goals, punts. See how much of a rise that'll get out of that London crowd.
It's funny you mentioned that, like how will they cheer? Because, there's a constant low hum of cheering going on during a football match.
Sure.
Just with a U, right? They don't do that here. Shut up. The offense is working. You know what I mean?
Offense at work. 615-737-1045. Bill in Middle Tennessee, we will get to you, talk some Vols, and I'm curious who Brad Hopkins has most enjoyed watching in the National Football League in 2023, and maybe who's least enjoyed watching as well. Brad Hopkins in studio with us till 1 o'clock on 104.5 The Zone.
Central Barbecue is what's on my mind because lunch is right around the corner. Whether it's lunch or dinner, Central Barbecue in Hillsborough Village is your place to go. 21 years of serving Memphis-style competition barbecue that they've brought here to Middle Tennessee. Hillsborough Village, like I said, is where you can go check out their location. It's the Old Sportsman's Grill for those of you who have been in Nashville for a while. So many great options, whether it's the brisket or chicken tacos that Lucas and I just completely feasted on the other day. It was a bit of a demolition derby in the break room, scrambling to get to the Central Barbecue brisket tacos ASAP. They've got smoked wings. They've got all kinds of great daily specials. As a matter of fact, it's $2 Tuesday at Central Barbecue, so you can go check out all of their great offerings at cbq.com.
Moving right along with some Aretha. Brad Hopkins hanging out with us in studio on 104.5 The Zone. Jackson Williams is our producer. I'm Lucas Panzica. Buck, in the midst of his London travels, he will join us at 12:20. Update us on whatever airport he's calling in from. Talk some Titans and Ravens. Great chat with John Sadak of Westwood One. That is always the thing that fascinates me, B-Hop, about these games. Like, the Jags have, at this point, created this residency in London where I'm sure there are some fans out there that are just used to seeing the Jacksonville Jaguars and gravitate towards them, which is a funny concept, I suppose. But otherwise, it's whichever team is able to travel more fans over there, and then all the in-betweens. You see jerseys of all sorts, and they're cheering for kicks and punts, and some of them are cheering for touchdowns. It just seems like a very interesting environment.
Well, I would say that the team that plays the most over there will become most familiar with the fan base, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to house a team over there, in my opinion, because of the distance that they'd have to travel, you'd have to have more than one. Because while that one team traveled to the States for maybe a 3-week stint of playing state games over here in the United States, that means that there's 3 weeks of less or no games being played in London, in Tottenham Stadium or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So why not have another team that would be playing home games there to keep up the interest in the NFL? You see what I'm saying? So if you're going to pick one AFC team, I'd say Jags, because why? It's probably an easier trip leaving from Jacksonville, flying to London. It's right there versus LA or one of those teams doing it, right? So maybe it's an NFC team that would have maybe a New York team, maybe the Giants, or maybe the Commanders. That would be a team that would be housed over there. So that way it would give that presence. I understand completely the NFL's interest in playing internationally, because if you look at it by comparison to the other football sport that has dominated the global attention, they want to kind of tap into that, because we pale in comparison to what the eyeballs that are watching a World Cup or watching the pitch would do. For us, it's exclusive to the Americans, and what we love is football with 2 O's versus the football with a U.
Well, you went to Mexico City as a player. You guys played the Cowboys, right? When you were still the Oilers, correct? When you went down to Mexico City.
Yep.
Obviously, difference in the time change that you have to deal with, right? Not nearly as drastic as going to London.
Right.
But what were the obstacles? What was the environment like in Mexico City, and what were the obstacles of international travel in the midst of a regular season?
I remember the things that they were telling us, like, make sure that they were really making sure that we didn't get pickpocketed when we were walking through the city. I'm serious. They told us these things that we should, places that we couldn't go. Of course, that's always whenever you tell somebody not to go somewhere, it's like, oh, okay, that's exactly the first place I'm going.
Thanks for giving me some incentive.
Exactly. But the field conditions were absolutely atrocious, because you're dealing with soccer players that are usually running up and down the pitch versus these guys like linemen that are digging into turf. Lucas, I remember there would be divots in the field that you have to jump over.
Oh.
I mean, think about that. You're running down the field, and there's a piece of turf that's so big that you have to jump over it to make sure and that was all over the place. I remember when we went to practice at the stadium that we were going to play in the day before the game, the toilets exploded.
Oh, my goodness.
And there was literal stuff pouring down the steps out of it was ridiculous. And this is where we had to go to change our clothes and stuff. It was terrible. So it was ill-equipped to handle the NFL at that point. The trip itself was fun, but it wasn't, like you said, like going over to Germany or London or something like that. It was like we just flew down to Mexico City. It was like, I only think the flight was 3 hours.
Sure.
Right? So
from Texas, come on, that's nothing.
But there was, and that's why I brought it up to John earlier, the difference in environment. And you have to be cognizant of those things. There's no way that you can't be. And those things sometimes can distract you from what needs to happen to prepare for a game. And that's why I thought that Mike Vrabel made the conscious decision to keep his team in Nashville as long as he could, get the work in, put the hay in the barn, and then go. But then I can also see the reverse of that, in that, I'm acknowledging that these things do happen, that being in a different environment, players tend to react differently, and I want them to get that newness out of their system and get to a certain rhythm, a cadence that we can actually come in agreement on and win this ball game. So I can see the difference in both. Let's put the work in at home, familiar environment, no much distractions, versus, hey, let's get the distractions out of the way, because we're definitely admitting that they're a reality, but they're not going to be a cause root for us losing this game.
615-737-1045. Bill wants to chime in to talk about this Tennessee game against Texas A&M. What's up, Bill?
Hey, it's a beautiful day in Middle Tennessee as always, guys.
Yes, sir.
I hope y'all are doing well as I am right now.
We are, sir. Thank you.
Hey, what you kind of both? I almost got with the Titans and the Vols, and here's one of the things that I'm looking at. I am seeing a lot of pulling guards and tackles, but they're not able to get out and get on the outer perimeter and block their players. So we need, both teams, Tennessee, Vols, and the Titans, they have got to have that guard pulling out when they want to open up a space in the flat so that guy can run out there and do what he's got to do. Plus, I do want to touch a little bit on the defensive corners. Both teams need to work on that. Something's going on with that. I'm going to hang up and listen to you guys. Hey, have a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day in Middle Tennessee and at Middle Tennessee Paintball. Talk to you later.
All right, Bill. Thanks for the call, brother.
You throwing a commercial there, too?
Yeah, threw a plug in.
That's nice.
Yeah. Don't blame him for that.
You ever been shot with a paintball?
Oh, yeah.
Have you really?
Absolutely. Yeah, in high school, a lot of paintball in high school, yes.
Are you serious?
Yes. How about you?
That's cool. Okay, quick story. I'll get to the story in a minute with the paintball.
We'll talk about Christian Fulton on the other side here.
Well, I kind of want to get into these questions first because I would forget what we were talking about.
Yeah.
The paintball thing was kind of crazy. So the pulling guard thing. I can understand where a pulling guard would then be distracted by somebody that came into his path before he was getting to, say, the flat or where he was supposed to be going, right? That meant that somebody else lost their block. Everybody has to block in the run game. Receivers have to block in the run game. Sometimes you see a quarterback block in the run game, if it caused for him to do that, like on a counter play or something like that, where he all of a sudden has the handoff and he's showing, giving that misdirection, and next thing you know, he's leading the counter, right? Or leading some kind of blocking. But I think that when receivers lose up front, sometimes that means that there's a guy maybe in the flat that you have to block, and you're not allowed to get there. And that sometimes happens. Or you give up penetration at the line of scrimmage, and he gets knocked off. You know what I'm saying? He's trying to pull and get around somebody to get out in space. And if there are a lot of bodies around, a lot of traffic to kind of wade your way through, that can slow down actually the initial block. And you're not even able to get it sometimes. And then what happens? Guys come screaming in the backfield, and next thing you know, it's a loss. So I can see where the effort to be athletic and get the ball on the edge by getting a big body out there in front to block could be an advantage. But there's so many things that can happen between A and B that sometimes don't make that happen. All right. Now, the corners. How much confidence do we have to run cover 1, cover 3? I'm saying those situations where you only have one guy that's over the top, and you may have man or press coverage where guys are sitting right down on top of the receivers. You only do that if you got dogs. If you have dudes that can take away that part of the field. Other than that, you're going to give a cushion. You're going to play zone, a soft zone, giving some space. But then you also know that you got guys that are working with you, and that you have to very much worry about a zone, like a quarter, half, or just some space on the field versus that guy. You know what I mean? So it really depends on personnel. If I got Deion Sanders out there, I'm not worried about anybody throwing to this side of the field. If I got said super corner X out there, that's a part of the field the quarterback's not even going to go to because he's not trying to screw up his stats, right? But if there's a situation where I'm not as confident on those edges, now I'm running more cover 2 stuff, running stuff where I've got to bracket these good receivers that I know have the ability to sit down. And in a lot of instances like that, when you're running zone coverage, that's who takes advantage of that. Tight ends, safety valves, running backs in the flat, because you've got guys that are not necessarily keying on one person, but a space on the field that they have to guard against. And that means that those smart guys, those smart relationships like Kelsey and Mahomes, they know where to find those spaces. They know where to sit down. They know when to stop moving. They know when to mirror the quarterback when he gets out of the pocket to do stuff that's trying to keep the play downfield. You see what I'm saying? Versus
Lamar, Mark Andrews.
Exactly. And that's when you can take advantage of that. Chig was one of our most trusted receivers last year because he had that relationship with Ryan. And Ryan trusted him to find him when need be, especially when the play broke down. And this kid with the ball in his hands, he's shown himself to be above average. Mm-hmm. And it's getting better. So you want to have that's why, in my opinion, if you have a weapon like a great tight end, and most of those offenses do have those great tight ends. If you think of championship teams, And very rarely do they not have that dude that could exploit the defense in those situations, because you've got to be very disciplined in that area. So I think it's the confidence that you would have to be able to sit up on the receiver, take him out of the game, versus using everybody else to help me deal with this dude. And some people you just can't, like Devontae Adams. I wouldn't press him. Not even one bit, even though he's in the slot most of the time. I wouldn't press that dude at all, because he's going to get open. I mean, it's just like he said, he's like 7-Eleven. He's always open, and he is always open because he's smart enough to know what a defense is trying to do or trying to take away from him. And a smart quarterback like Garoppolo on a normal occasion. Now, I'd say 4 attempts to Devontae Adams kind of silly. But, when you really make a concerted effort to get the ball in the hands of guys that make a difference like that, it really shows.
So, Titans don't play Devontae Adams this weekend, but some playmakers on the Baltimore Ravens that we can talk about in that regard. And also Mike Vrabel's comments on Nicholas Petit-Frere and how he factors in as he is eligible to return, the gambling suspension ending early. We'll get Brad Hopkins' thoughts on that as well. 615-737-1045, hour number 3. Coming up next on 1045, The Zone.
The way my head just starts to bob anytime I hear that Fergie song. Incredible. You know what else is incredible? Joint pain relief. That's what QC Kinetics is here to provide. If you've been told more steroids or surgery are your only options, don't be so fast. Get a second opinion and learn more about how you can harness your body's own healing agents to attack that joint pain. I'm talking lasting relief. QC Kinetics does not mask the pain. The treatments go to the very root of the issue using concentrated healing properties placed directly in your joint to restore and repair the damaged tissue. You want to live your life this fall with no more pain in your knees, your hips, your shoulder, your back. It makes it a lot easier to go to events, go to pumpkin patches, go to football games, all the cool fall stuff that you want to do while the weather is ideal. With no drugs, no downtime, and no surgery. Life is about motion, and QC Kinetics is giving people their lives back with these all-natural treatments, so call them today. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024.
What is going on? It is 12:04 from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. First Titans injury report of the week came out yesterday. 5 players off the practice field for the Titans. Wide receiver Traylon Burks, linebacker Luke Gifford, defensive back Elijah Molden, defensive lineman Jeffrey Simmons, and defensive lineman Tier Tart. Aziz Al-Shayer, Aaron Brewer both limited with neck injuries yesterday, while Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins limited yesterday, designated as rest. For the Ravens, Jadeveon Clowney, Odafe Owe, and Geno Stone missed practice. Clowney's was said to be an illness. He looks like he will be good to go for Sunday. Odell Beckham, Marlon Humphrey, Patrick McCarry, and Morgan Moses all limited for the Ravens. You can catch that game 8:30 a.m. right here on The Zone. Thursday Night Football tonight, Chiefs-Broncos, 7:15 on Amazon Prime or right here on The Zone. Chiefs already ruled out Frank Clark, and reports coming out that him and the Broncos agreed to part ways. Travis Kelce questionable for that game, but did practice this week. Broncos getting a little help back in running back Javonte Williams, who is practicing this week with no injury designation. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 3. Good morning becomes good afternoon on 104.5 The Zone. Lucas Panzica with you. Brad Hopkins has been in studio with us until 1 o'clock. Maybe we get a cameo from Buck Rising from an airport somewhere out there in the ether as he makes his way to London. Jackson Williams, our producer, 615-737-1045 is how you can reach us. Also, of course, on the F&M Bank chat, 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. We were talking during the break, Brad Hopkins, about players that are easily targetable by fans, right? What is the most easily scrutinized position in the National Football League? I guess quarterback. You just go ahead and put that one to the side.
Hands down.
What's the second most?
Left tackle.
Left tackle. I'd sense a personal tinge on that. But in all honesty, the two most targeted players, for lack of a better term, by Titans fans this season have been the left tackle and the cornerback, Christian Fulton. Are those the two most the positions where the mistakes are most easily exposed? Offensive line, again, quarterback we're putting to the side for obvious reasons, but offensive line and cornerback.
Look at a team and where they spend money, and that's where you see the pressure. Quarterback makes the most money on any team, gets more of the blame, gets more of the accolades, just part of the game, right?
Yeah.
The guy that's protecting him, he gets paid handsomely as well, especially the guy protecting his blind side. Cornerback, I got to be on your best receiving option and take him out of the equation. That's also money. So where you spend money are on those positions that you know are pivotal for your success. They're vital for your success. And when you don't have that kind of success or consistency or feel good about those positions, then it's easy to then take shots. Not take shots, but just point out sometimes the obvious. Point out the things that have been plaguing offensively and defensively and say, why aren't we better for all the money that we're spending? If some backup slep comes in there and he's that cornerback and he makes good, you're like, oh, my gosh, this is awesome, and we're not even paying him. But where does the pressure come? Now he got the bag. Now he's shown that he can be a valuable player. Now we expect you to do those things that you did to get that money, right? And that's what happens. So you just look at where teams spend money and the players that they have in those positions, and they're usually really, really good players, right? Like a Trayvon Diggs or a, left tackles. Who would be a really good left tackle nowadays? Tyron Smith, maybe? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, Teron Armstead.
Trent, one of those guys that has been around for a minute. And you see
Trent Williams.
Right, getting paid handsomely because of the pressure that they're under to perform their jobs. So you just don't have to go further than, what's expected, especially for the pay scale, because nobody's blaming the holder for anything. Well, maybe sometimes.
Sometimes. William says kicker in the F&M Bank chat. That's definitely a good
kicker's
submission.
huge. Yeah. Nowadays, especially with the extra point being at the 35, right? And it's not just a chip shot or just a given that you're going to get that 1 point after a touchdown. It does put more pressure on those guys. And put this way, another thing, you could take the best, most athletic player on any team, ask him to kick a field goal and see what his average would be. You see what I'm saying? So there is, there's leverage in that. This guy is performing a task that is hard to do, like a quarterback, like a left tackle, like a corner, or a kicker. And how well do they do that job? Is that a struggle for them?
What have you seen from Andre Dillard in a 5-week sample size? We know what happened in the Cleveland game, but let's kind of put the Cleveland game over here and the other 4 over here. Let's talk about the Andre Dillard that you watched against Cleveland and the Andre Dillard you've seen in his other 4 performances for the Titans. How have you weighed those?
I'm glad you just said that. 4 performances for the Titans, and how many before that? Experience goes a long way, in my opinion. And the less time you have on the field, the less experienced you are. Now, the Cleveland situation was an anomaly in that I'm playing against the best dude in the National Football League at rushing the passer by myself. I think that there could have been a number of things that were done to slow down the pass rush. Now, that might admit putting a tight end on the line of scrimmage or flanking a guy that's going to run out in a route and chip his shoulder on the way out, giving him some help. Some players don't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't like that because I'd be setting up outside, and all of a sudden here comes this running back chipping the dude inside. Now I'm out of position. I'm like, what are you doing? I would yell at Frank Wycheck so many times, do not touch my guy on the way out here, because it's going to slow down what I'm trying to do. And by schematics, I'm using our play call against that defense. If I'm Andre Dillard, and I know we're sliding my direction, sliding towards, God, I can't remember his name. The dude, Browns guy, slipping me.
Myles Garrett.
Golly, how do I forget Myles Garrett's name? Anyway, so if I'm sliding to Myles Garrett, I'm going to, and I know my left guard is sitting on my inside waiting to knock his teeth out. I'm going to jump head up to where Myles is or to his outside and force him to where my line is sliding versus taking a short set, giving him my outside arm, and next thing you know, I'm beat around the edge. So I'm playing to my protection, knowing where my strengths are. Now, that comes with consistency. That comes with me and my left guard being on the same page. Zach Pillar loved working with me. Do you know why? Because I used our protection versus me being one-on-one. I say, hey, look, I want you to jump down inside so 69 can knock your head off. And eventually they start realizing that, like, golly, I got nowhere to go because Hop's fast enough to jump out to my outside, and he's trying to force me back into all the traffic. I'm not trying to get out that way, so what do? Widen out. They get wider and wider. Well, a young quarterback, a young player like a Dillard or somebody like that doesn't have a lot of experience, they then start playing to where that defensive end is, and they start jumping out further and jumping out further. You don't have to do that because eventually time is on your side. And if I sit in a comfortable position where I know I'm not out of position, you eventually got to come to me. So I'm just going to sit here and wait on you. That's all it is. So it's experience. It's being in those moments. And this is a small sample size of him being a starter, right? And he's still learning some things. He's still learning who he's working with.
Yeah.
So ask me this question in 5 more weeks.
And he's worked with 2 different left guards.
And that's another thing. I'm switching up communication style, understanding familiarity, looking at the same thing. Bruce and I stopped talking. Bruce Matthews, I'm talking about. We stopped talking to each other verbally 5 years into us playing together. But then again, we did have the luxury of playing together for 10.
Yeah.
So that meant that there was a lot of communication that we didn't have to have, but we completely understood the play design and what we were trying to do in that moment.
So with Dillard, apart from the Cleveland game, again, we know what that was. The other 4 performances, you'd say good enough?
I don't see him being near a liability as some would think that he is. Okay, now look, given that last performance, you're going up against a great player. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I guarantee you, when you look at Myles Garrett and the pockets that he's had to face, he's probably faced very few one-on-ones or else he'd have 3 or 4 sacks in a multitude of games. That's just the player he is. But you've also got to recognize that too, though. So no one's going to forget who Myles Garrett is or where he's at on the football field at every single time, but you didn't see him flipping around. You didn't see him standing up. You didn't see him going over to the left side. You didn't see him just trying to find those chinks in the armor that can actually get in there. Now, you knew right where his bread was buttered. I'm going to come right here, right down this guy's whatever. So it is what it is. Just be smart about it. I think at this point, going into week 5 or week 6, There just needs to be some more consistency. He needs to have some more wins that give him the confidence that he's right where he needs to be. So we'll see.
Where do you see Dillard's biggest weaknesses and biggest strengths? Like, what type of pass rusher do you think gives him the most problems?
Speed. And that's the case with a lot of guys. If a defensive lineman can get off the ball, because he's looking down into, you see me looking down like I'm looking at a ball. He's looking down in at the line of scrimmage at the ball to see when he can go, right? Now, me as a offensive lineman, I have to go by the cadence because I'm not looking in at the ball. I just got to go by what I hear.
Yeah.
And I know in that certain rhythm, I need to get out and get into space and get stopped. That's the problem. Because when you're going up against a speed rusher, you're trying to get off the ball, off the line of scrimmage as fast as you can, but you got to stop at some point, or else your momentum keeps you going, and then that guy uses that momentum against you in one way or the other. If he's widened out and running a complete beeline straight to where the quarterback is going to set up, because why? You know where the defensive lineman is going. The defensive lineman is going to a setup point for the quarterback. He's trying to see exactly where that back foot is going to hit before he steps up into the pocket to deliver a pass. That's where he's going to go. So when you see two defensive ends say, hey, meet you at the quarterback, they already have a set point to where they're trying to get to. I got to tip you off of that angle. You see, I got to make sure that you're not comfortably going down your path to get to that guy, whether it's just a slight running them around, But obviously I have to have a quarterback that's smart enough and has enough integrity in our pocket to not try and escape when he doesn't need be, especially to his right in against a pass rusher that's running that way anyway. So you just got to have communication. You got to have, and that comes from just being, having enough reps to be able to do it, seeing those situations, being in those situations, working with each other to communicate that when they happen again, you know how to best handle those things when they come up.
And we were talking during the break, the speed around the edge being an issue for Ravens left tackle Ronnie Stanley to deal with this season. See if the Titans can play into that and that pass rush can get right after not affecting the quarterback quite enough in Indianapolis. Buck Rising somewhere out there on the way to London, so we'll see if he can chime in, preview this matchup some more. 615-737-1045, your phone calls as well as Brad Hopkins hangs out with us in studio on 1045 The Zone.
I feel as good as I ever have in my life, and that's because I lost 58 pounds thanks to PhD weight loss. I was passing Ramon Foster in the hallway. Big fella used to be a little harder to get around in the hallway, but he is down over 70 pounds courtesy of PhD weight loss. The results have been spectacular. What's been even better, more rewarding still, is the fact that PhD weight loss has given us both the tools to keep the weight off. It's been several months since I met my goal of 200 pounds by the last Super Bowl. And the fact that I have not only maintained but continued to lose weight in a healthy fashion has been so cool to see. They are so confident in their process at PhD Weight Loss because they've helped people like Ramon, me, so many others that have signed up for the program that they will guarantee you this. If you do not get within 5 pounds of your healthy target weight loss goal within the time frame that they allot, they will continue to coach you for free until you do. MyPhDWeightLoss.com. That's MyPhDWeightLoss.com.
Been hanging out with Brad Hopkins on 104.5 The Zone with you until 1 o'clock. Buck Rising decided not to show up for his own radio show today. So he almost didn't show up on the Zoom link that Jackson Williams sent him. I think he's out there somewhere on the internet waves. I don't know, Buck. Am I talking to you right now, or am I talking to nobody?
What do you mean I didn't show up for work? You decided to hijack this thing because you thought you'd get free barbecue out of it, which, to my knowledge, you have yet to receive. So you still need me for some things. But yes, I was on time on the Zoom. Brad, thank you very, very much for bailing him out last minute. You were good to do so. He doesn't deserve you. And it's good to be with you boys.
That part is true. I think we do have barbecue on the way, but can't confirm that quite yet. 615-737-1045. So where are you right now?
I'm sitting in an airport terminal here in Boston, awaiting my next trek internationally to get over to London. And I've been in the Logan Airport before. They played the Patriots a couple of times, and I've familiarized myself with the entirety of the each terminal now. I've tried all the different foods in all the different areas of the airport. I've been here for a considerable amount of time already, and still an hour or two left to go.
Buck, how hard do you think it will be to do your job going over to London with all the things there are to see? Would it be hard for you to do? Will you be distracted at any point?
Oh, not anymore. I have the attention span of a small rodent, Brad. So it's not any more distracting for me to do the radio show at home than it is in London. I do love London. I've been, this will be my, I think, 7th time, second in a professional capacity. And it's just such an awesome city. So many sights and sounds around. And to do the radio show tomorrow in a pub rather, I'm certain there will be distractions. So we will gauge my level of competency then. But yeah, it's not like I'm terribly focused anyway.
I actually asked that so that way you can compare maybe what some of these players that are going over to London for the first time would have to contend with. Do you think that could be a point of contention, the fact that this is something new to them that might be distracting?
Hell yes. I mean, there's so many different logistical things. These are, and I don't have to tell Brad anything he doesn't know, but you guys are creatures of comfort and routine. In particular, routine and structure and all the different things. And this, of course, is a hugely disruptive element in the middle of your day-to-day or the coaches and athletes day-to-day, certainly. So, yeah, whether it's just simply food tasting different, obviously jet lag that'll have to be accounted for. Are you consuming as much caffeine as you might otherwise to make sure that you can try and adjust your body as quickly as humanly possible to the time change? The weather, for God's sakes, is going to be, I think the high is 51 degrees Fahrenheit at kickoff, and I don't anticipate it's going to be 51 by the time we get underway, 2:30 British Standard Time. So, yes, I think it's entirely possible that for both teams, there will be distractions aplenty. How you mitigate those, I think, is incumbent as much as it is on the individual as it is on, the team and the structure around them.
So, Buck, we were going to do this regardless of if you showed up or not, so I will not let you derail this part of the show because Mike Vrabel talked yesterday about Nicholas Petit-Frere, obviously back early from his gambling suspension. We've seen he has been lined up on the left side at times during practice. And, Jackson, can we hear from Mike Vrabel on if NPF is a factor in the short term, at least this weekend in London, on that right side?
Nick's been out a while, so Nick will have to earn a spot back onto the offensive line and what we're trying to do. So he had a little bit of practice last week, and he'll get more this week.
So, Brad, I wanted to play that for you because, A, vote of confidence for Hubbard on that right side. But, B, what have you made of NPF potentially lining up on the left and just the difficulty of that, playing on the left side in college, on the right side in the pros, and now potentially getting some of that work if needed on the left? What is that process like for Nicholas Petit-Frere? What does he have to overcome to be able to play where needed? Because at this point, are we looking at Nicholas Petit-Frere as this team's swing tackle?
Well, first off, if you listen to what Mike Vrabel said in between the lines, he's talking about limited time that he's had to prepare. He had some practice time last week. He's had a little more. I think that was the exact words he used. And in my opinion, that says not enough. I'm not saying that he, from a condition standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, he's not up to taking on being the starter just yet, but I think that he is a little bit underserved as far as having the time in the pocket to get himself acclimated with working with those guys up front. And there is such thing as game time conditioning. Why? Because it's more emotional when you're playing a game. It is exhausting when you're playing in a regular game versus you running around in practice and maybe doing conditioning afterwards. It's a completely different situation. So some of those things, that is what Mike was talking about, getting himself up to speed to be able to earn the opportunity to play out there. And I think that it just comes with repetition during the week and obviously playing in games. So for Nicholas, I'm thinking that what Mike is saying is that he's served the suspension. Now will he be able to get himself in game time speed and game time condition enough to not be a liability, you see? And they know what he's looked like during the week. He's had an opportunity to look at the game plan, to work on some of the things that they're going to be trying to implement in the game on Sunday. So it's not like he's foreign to it. I'm sure he's gotten the reps. But at this point, it's just he needs more of that. He needs more game time experience, too, to feel comfortable with what he's doing and working with those guys around him.
So, Buck, with NPF, are we to the point where Hubbard has to lose that job, or can NPF come and reclaim that job? Is there anything he can do if Hubbard's play doesn't waver? Is there a world in which Nicholas Petit-Frere is able to snatch that job back, I suppose, throughout the course of practice in the coming weeks?
No, I think that is, provided health, which is not a given. Chris Hubbard is your right tackle this season, and that was something that, we talked about this, and I did a little reporting around the George Fant situation, who ultimately ended up signing in Houston. He wanted starting caliber money to come play here because his agent knew that this was a job that was winnable even when NPF came back, and obviously that has since proven to be the case. So where he factors in. Right now, I think to see him active on a game day would be a start. Obviously, he was inactive for this most recent game at Indianapolis. We'll see if that's the case for London. I would imagine that would be so. And obviously he's made the trip, or will make the trip when they fly out 4:30 Central Time this afternoon. But yeah, I think we're more looking at a swing tackle situation than we are anything else, because I honestly think they're going to give Dillard and Skoronski more time to settle in. Now that Skoronski is back in the lineup, and like we said, you can't predict health with any of these situations, but I don't think there's a job for Nick right now.
I think also, Buck, the one thing that we need to take into consideration is the 8 more years of experience that Chris Hubbard has on Nicholas Petit-Frere. In other words, he might not have been a consistent starter all those 10 years, but he's seen more game time situations than Nicholas has to this point, and that might lend to more confidence that Mike Vrabel has in sticking with him. And like you said, it is at this point Chris's job to lose. Why? Because he has the most game time experience in this season than Nicholas has.
Oh, without question. And, Brad, that I think is something that people take for granted. And obviously things have become so much more Maddenized, or at least the thought process has become so much more Maddenized from fan bases. The Titans, Colts, whomever it is, right? When you talk about just dropping players back into a situation, there are so many different things that you have to account for. And this is still a player who is so young in his career, year 2, and having to start 16 games to his credit, or getting to start 16 games to his credit, beating Dylan Radins out for that job initially in training camp of 2022. That was a good step, but so much more wealth of knowledge and ability, just the ability to be flexible, to adapt, that Chris Hubbard has. While NPF may turn out to be, the left or right tackle of the future, who's to say? For the immediate, Mike Vrabel has always valued veterans for this reason. When they have to make these transactions, he's way, way, way more inclined to go to a guy who's had playing time and experience, multiple years of experience in the league. When they need to have guys fill in, there's examples of it all over the place, whether it's Deontay Foreman, Dontrell Hilliard, Buster Screen, Terrence Mitchell, all these guys who have had to, because of the Titans injury situation, come in here on short notice and get ready to play as soon as humanly possible. The learning curve is shortened for a guy like Chris Hubbard than for NPF, who is just in year 2.
There's also that expectation of where you came into the league. Chris Hubbard came into the league as a Pittsburgh free agent. There really wasn't that much expectation for him to even make a roster versus the 69th pick of the draft a couple of years ago. So even as a third-round pick, I'm not saying you would expect a third-rounder to crack the starting lineup, but I would say someone that has been kind of a relative journeyman compared to someone that has been a draftee, a top 100 draft pick, as a matter of fact, I would say that they would expect to see him on the field sooner than later. What do you think, Buck?
Oh, for sure. I mean, and that is something that I think, cannot be ruled out this year with Andre Dillard. They're helping their tackles so much, Brad. When I watch and Lucas, obviously, when we watch these games, and it's limiting. I think the playbook. I think Tim Kelly, in an honest moment, would tell you that he would like to do more with their passing game. Should they not have to keep guys in to help in these situations just to be able to function right now? And that's something that they've had to account for. They've had a lot of practice with it in the last calendar year with the Dennis Daly situation and the injuries that were wrought there throughout the course of the year. So I think they would love to get Nick out on the field sooner rather than later. And, how they go about doing that, how much worse or I don't want to say worse, but if there is no even incremental progress with Andre Dillard on the left side, they have to be prepared to make that switch, I think, as soon as after the bye at home against the Falcons. I think that's a great opportunity to make changes or tweaks as you see fit. That is a pretty substantial change to make. But if you're ramping this guy up for anything, I think it should be more action on the left than it would be the right.
Let's take some calls, shall we? 615-737-1045. Kyle has been waiting in Shelbyville next on 1045 The Zone. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, guys. Love the show. Unfortunately, this week we've been talking about Christian Fulton, and I've become obsessed with Fulton and his wandering eye. So I won't be able to watch the game like you can, Buck. After every defensive series, because you just tweet out 4th and 8, Titans force a punt, Fulton's eyes not in the backfield. Just something so we can find out. And also, who is Blaine Bishop of the locker room who will politely ask Fulton to start doing his job better? Just who's your thoughts on that? Jeff Simmons?
Nah, got to be somebody in his position like the mayor.
Thanks, Kyle.
Go ahead, Buck.
No, I mean you're spot on. It's not like he's not being challenged by his teammates. Maybe not as I can't, having not been a professional athlete in my life as Brad has. He could speak to locker dynamics far better than I could, and certainly there's a difference generationally in the way guys and coaches handle one another on the day-to-day that is evident, I think, more and more. But I've talked about this a lot, Brad. There is not that kind of personality that at least to make it a little more modern, not to age you and Blaine, but to make it a little more modern. Delaney Walker, Jarrell Casey, guys, Wesley Woodyard, guys who could be consistently relied upon to speak for the team and to speak to the team publicly in ways that may not always be the most comfortable, but got the point across and had a sense of, I don't want to say that they lack a sense of urgency, but certainly whatever the messaging has been from coaches and players, frankly, is not hitting hard enough. I don't know how much more they need to self-inflict their own wounds before there's some kind of come to football Jesus moment. But right now, or at least in this season, that hasn't clicked for them yet.
Sometimes you need to say something. Then sometimes it's obvious, Buck, Lucas. It's obvious that you're making my job harder. Football is about accountability because DBs don't kick field goals. Quarterbacks don't tackle people. Linemen don't, hold for the ball. In other words, I have to rely on the people around me to be able to do my job. And if somehow you've shown yourself to be a liability or something that they can key in on to have success, now we have to have this conversation if it's not already obvious. So I get it. Eyes peeking in the backfield, those kind of things, they're habitual that you've got to change. But I think ultimately it is up to the unit itself to hold each other accountable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, put it this way, when I put on the tape and we're going over the game itself, do I really have to say what happened? If I caught you looking in the backfield and you got beat on a route like that, I'm going to obviously bring that to your attention if it already has been brought to your attention. But I shouldn't have to say these things that we ultimately are all looking at. I think the best situation, Buck, Lucas, for those guys to do is to watch the game afterwards together. I'm talking about offense and defense. So that way you can hear how each of the situations is being dealt with. Because, like I said, it is about accountability. It is about you being able to do your job. Because ultimately we need each other to be able to do this. This is not an individual sport, not by any stretch.
Buck, are you comfortable with being able to
Go ahead, Lucas. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, are you comfortable being able to chart Christian Fulton's eyes on every play? The quality of your binoculars at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium good enough to do that?
I mean, honest to God, I'm going to have to, because like Brad is 1,000% correct, of course. And sometimes it's not necessary to confront somebody however you would confront them, right? And everybody's got their own leadership style or approach to dealing with people. And as a corresponding thing, people are receptive in different ways to that kind of feedback. But, Brad, I know dealing with the media and talking to the media is one thing, as opposed to talking amongst yourselves as a team. But Christian Fulton telling me and telling us in the locker room after Indianapolis that he felt he had played a technically sound game, and I would call it dismissive of the ideas that he needs to be better with his eyes. When Vrabel is bringing this up with us not 5 minutes before in a post-game press conference where he is saying, yeah, I coached him at halftime. Apparently that's not being received. And that's when we start having the discussion, is benching him on the table, so much so that it's continued to be a theme that the coach has publicly acknowledged through the week. So something is not being conveyed there, because this is a player that did not have these problems to this extent. And all of a sudden it's an entire, maybe not entire season. He's missed a game with a hamstring injury, but it's 4 games of this stuff. Get out of here.
Well, let's talk about the players Christian Fulton will be having to defend come Sunday. On the other side, the Ravens wide receiver core, and the guy that's kind of risen to the top of that group. Buck Rising on Zoom via the Boston airport. Brad Hopkins in studio with you until 1 o'clock. We'll do that. Wrap up the show with polls next on 104.5 The Zone. Wrapping things up on 104.5 The Zone. Buck Rising on Zoom via Boston. Brad Hopkins in studio with us on 104.5 The Zone. I'm Lucas Panzica. Jackson Williams, our producer. Polls coming up here in a few minutes, but we have not talked a lot about this receiving core of the Baltimore Ravens, much maligned after Sunday's loss to Pittsburgh with 5 drops, the most by any singular NFL team in one game this season. Buck, this team still has the safety blanket that is tight end Mark Andrews, Odell Beckham Jr., the big offseason acquisition, Rashad Bateman, the former first-round pick at this point, is a veteran. Yet it is Zay Flowers who leads this team in targets, catches, and yards in 2023.
Man, they've got to get more out of Bateman. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to watch more than just highlights of the Ravens Steelers game, but I mean the drop in the end zone was particularly egregious. But he's getting out snapped by Nelson Aguilar this year, which is crazy. Who is a talented player, but also has considerable drops issues, and that's somebody who, at least thus far and through 5 weeks of football, the Ravens coaching staff seems to trust more. I was so frustrated watching that game for Lamar Jackson to see how many missed opportunities that he did have and route to only 10 points on the day. But the thing is, this is why we talk about, or at least, depending on which coaches you talk to or what coaching staff you talk to, the idea of playing the better teams earlier in the season while they're still kind of ironing some of these things out, because there is no question that Lamar is operating very, very well within this Todd Monken system that is new to him. And I really think it's just kind of like the Joe Burrow situation. They missed good Burrow by a week, the Titans did, and they should be grateful for it, given what the state of the secondary looks like right now. You would rather get Lamar Jackson while the offense is still having some of these miscues before they have time to kind of smooth out some of the curves.
Buck, would you say last week was an anomaly? Or would you say that Todd Monken is looking at the Colts-Titans game and saying, hey, I'm going to do a lot more of that?
I think that Shane Steichen, the Colts head coach and play caller, went into that game knowing very, very much that he wanted to run at a 3 wide receiver sets and that he wanted to run against that Titans nickel defense, Brad. Now, I think, they might have known that Tart was going to be unavailable, and obviously that plays a huge role in what makes the Titans so effective up front, and there's no way that you could have predicted Jeff's shoulder impacting him, the shoulder injury that he's on the report with, impacting him in that game the way that it did. But I think that there was definitely something that the Colts coaching staff had identified, saying that's a matchup we want to exploit.
Just interesting to me that Zay Flowers, drafted in the first round out of Boston College, comes in to be the guy to stretch things vertically, and he's done that, a long of 52 this year, like I said, leading the team in receiving yards, but has yet to catch a touchdown. Mark Andrews leads the team with 3 touchdowns. Like the Titans, only 2 players have receiving touchdowns for the Ravens. It is Mark Andrews with the 3 and Nelson Aguilar with just the 1. But for the Titans, Buck, I feel like everybody's anticipating a low-scoring game on Sunday. Is it just about doing what the Pittsburgh Steelers did last weekend, just hanging around? You can't bank on the Ravens making those miscues, but hanging around and then doing something late, which is how the Ravens have lost both of their games.
No, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. We'll see whether or not they're capable of doing more than what the Pittsburgh Steelers did last weekend, but I don't think that they can afford themselves that opportunity. This is a team that has played clean football games, not turned the ball over in opportunities, and it's still not have been enough. They need to be able to execute better in the red zone. That's what this comes down to. We can talk all we want about matchups, and we can talk all we want about personnel being deficient and things of that nature, but when it comes time to make the plays that are drawn up, and thus far we've seen, I think, successful game plans and designs by Tim Kelly, that there's just been whiffs in one form or another. I know that the Tannehill missed touchdown opportunity to Nick Westbrook-Akina up the left sideline has been highlighted a lot this week on the internet. Tannehill could certainly stand to elevate himself. I understand he's under duress. I understand that that his situation is not ideal, and that he is not the kind of player over the course of his career that is going to be a quarterback to pull a team forward to further elevate a team, but he can't miss the layups that they're giving him within the offense. And as we talk about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens trying to just get on solid footing with where they are in their new system, I think the same could be said of the Titans, and it needs to happen. I mean, I think it's far more urgent for Tennessee to get right than Baltimore this weekend.
I know there have been a few quarterbacks, Buck, that have come into this season with a lot of question marks over their head about improving from one year to the next, specifically maybe here in Nashville. Give us your thoughts about Ryan running this offense, and is he finding the right complement of players like a D-Hop, like how they use Derrick Henry to run an efficient offense?
I think there's definitely been signs of it, right? And, that's not enough. They need to be able to – he needs to be able to string this together more consistently. I think of on the list of their issues, Brad, I'd probably get 8 or 9 different things before I highlighted him and where he has missed, but he has missed throws. I don't know if it's a product of the pressure and consistent pressure that he's been facing over the course of the last 2 seasons. He's had a lot of underthrows in particular that I've not noticed as much from him in his career. And certainly he can't afford to hang in the pocket and deliver on some of these passes the way that he has consistently. One of the biggest benefits of his career, because he just simply doesn't have the time. We saw, I know it was a desperate situation against the Colts in the final less than a minute there. But as soon as they asked that offensive line to hold up in protection, things fell apart. Like he got clobbered on that interception. And, for him, is it overcomable? Well, if that's even a word, we'll have to find out. But those issues are clearly there from an operational standpoint, Brad. At least when I watch them, you could speak more intelligently to that.
You know what? Lucas actually eloquently laid out how this team tracks first 2 plays as they come out. And you would normally think a team that's had a foundation of Derrick Henry that running the football will be more of an emphasis, but that is au contraire. Do you think that maybe that should change or it's an okay change given the fact that you have someone as serviceable as a DeAndre Hopkins running through the secondary? Should this team's identity change with the addition of such a pivotal player like D-Hop?
I think it should. I mean, I think if they're to have any chance, not just to talk about competing in the AFC, but to compete in this division, you have to be able to be more efficient as an offense. It is quantifiably evident that is easier to do with the passing game than it is with the rushing attack. And while Derrick is still a special player, and Derrick can still get you 29-yard touchdown runs from time to time and stiff arm dudes and make dudes miss. It can't be the primary means of offense anymore. And I think a lot of the personnel decisions and coaching decisions that they made this offseason were indicative of that change, that they recognize that change.
That's the music. 60 seconds on the clock. Buck Rising, thank you for the time. We're up against it. And we will see you. Man, that was quick. Quick trigger, Jackson.
Did not fade that out properly. That's my fault.
Appreciate Buck for hopping on. No time for polls, which are presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. B-Hop, thanks for hanging out, man.
Anytime, man.
Brad Hopkins.
You and I going to be doing something tomorrow, right?
High school football tomorrow night. Mount Juliet hosting Lebanon. Big region clash. Wilson County football. Going to be fun. 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock kick. B-Hop, appreciate the time. You can hear Brad Hopkins tomorrow as well on Blaine and Mickey, who are coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.